They called us in one by one. My hands trembled as I clutched my dull blue portfolio against my chest. The hall outside the university committee room smelled of waxed tile and burnt coffee, but in my mind, everything was sharper, meaner. I could hear my own heartbeat echoing off the high marble walls. Out of the corner of my eye, I watched two other students leave. Their faces, one blank as stone, the other brittle with forced composure. Then my full name was called, and I stepped forward. 3 professors sat behind a long oak table, sleeves rolled, reading glasses low. My work lay in front of them, each piece carefully mounted, every line and swatch of fabric chosen with hunched attention over many late nights. Yet even before they looked up, I recognized the mood in the room. My fate was sealed. Señora Montenegro, the chair began, using the formal señora that felt like a slap. We've reviewed your submission. I nodded, waiting, heart pounding like a misplayed drum. Your sketches show enthusiasm, some imagination, but your concepts are, how should I put it, abstract. This isn't what we expect for the graduate exhibition. I tried to swallow, but my throat was tight. But I couldn't finish the sentence. You have a vision, he said, voice flat, but it doesn't fit within the direction of the faculty. We fear it may not resonate with sponsors or the community. The word, community, hung in the air, a polite way to say even my own city wouldn't want me. There was a soft shuffle of paper, and then a final, thank you, Lucia. We appreciate your effort. It was over. I walked out, numb, carrying my dreams under my arm like a wounded bird. Outside, the city blazed quietly in the afternoon light, the kind unique to Buenos Aires, sun glaring off the avenidas passing taxis, the jacaranda trees already littering purple petals on the sidewalk, the buildings somehow both tired and elegant. My footsteps echoed as I moved through the avenue, my insides hollowed by grief, but edged with the sudden, strange clarity of finality. The call to Mama was the hardest part. Hija? Her voice was bright with hope. What did they say? I could not lie. They said no, Mama. They didn't like it. They said I don't fit. I could hear her breath over the line, the way it always caught before she softened disappointment with a practical question. This fashion thing, Lucia, maybe it's time to think. What about working with your Tío Geraldo in his shop? He always needs help with the books. I don't want to work with Uncle Geraldo, I said too quickly. Sometimes we want things that are not for us, mija. The world can be hard. That night, in our little flat in Almagro, she fried milanesa while I sat at the formica table, sketchbook untouched beside a plate that steamed in vain. The news traveled quickly in the way things do in a family like ours. Cousins, aunts, neighbors, old school friends, all with opinions and pieces of advice. My brother, Martín, came in from his shift at the garage, his mechanic's jumpsuit smeared with oil. He slid into the seat across from me, lips twisted in what passed for sympathy. Don't take it hard, Lucy, he said, taking a fry. Honestly, who becomes... That was worse. The gentle mockery, everyone's so sure I'd grow out of this phase, as if dreaming was a kind of childishness. I spent months drifting. Some mornings I woke with forgotten hope, grabbing for my sketchbook before remembering its pointlessness. Other days I lay in bed as traffic coughed by below, convinced my future had already curdled. My friends tried to include me, but it was hard to break through the cocoon of failure I wrapped around myself. I worked odd jobs, cashier at a bakery, folding shirts at a chain store, each role feeling like a cramped costume, too tight in the shoulders. Customers eyed me with polite blankness as I rang them up. The world asked nothing from me, so I became invisible. But every night, exhausted from hours on my feet or the numbing repetition of nilon o papel at the checkout, I pulled out my old sketchbook. No one watched then. In the deep blue quiet, I drew what I'd wanted to see. Flares of color, unlikely silhouettes, old tango dresses twisted into something new, a jacket cut with the curve of a river, skirts with the flutter of jacaranda petals. It costs nothing to fill a page. Grief has a way of sharpening what's essential. Even as doors closed, I grew clearer about what I loved. I watched people on the street, how a cabaret singer wore her heartbreak like sequins, how an old man's battered coat still held his pride. I started sewing again, quietly, patching my own clothes, then making things for my little cousins, their shy delight giving a flawed sense of purpose. A year passed, 2. Rejection no longer burned. It left a string of small scars I stopped feeling. My family's mocking became background noise. La modista soñadora, they called me, the daydreaming dressmaker. But sometimes my mother paused at the doorway to see what my hands were making, her mouth a line of tired hope. Then one night, while scrolling through an old internet cafe, I found a listing for an apprenticeship with a small, avant-garde collective in Palermo Viejo. No diploma required, just a portfolio and clear vision. Something in me, half-starved but stubborn, urged me to send my work. It felt pointless, but there was nothing left to lose. 3 weeks later, I got an email. They wanted to meet me. The collective studio was a crumbling old house painted hydrangea blue. Tucked among graffiti-tagged walls and cluster shops selling records and incense. The inside was chaos, fabric in bright heaps, mannequins in varying states of undress, and people arguing passionately about sleeves and thread counts over strong mate. No committee, no formal table, only a crowded kitchen where everyone talked and everyone worked. I showed my drawings, risking color, asymmetry, unapologetic lines. To my surprise, their eyes lit up. Fernanda, who ran the group, pushed her mess of curls from her brow and grinned at me. ¿Dónde has estado escondida, Lucia? Sit, work with us. It began for real there. Days were long. Money was scarce. We shared everything, from thrifted fabric to cigarettes. Nobody called my ideas too much. If anything, they wanted more. We put on tiny shows in warehouses, sent invites to local artists, made the rounds at obscure markets. Instead of waiting for validation, we created our own. Fernanda pushed my ideas and let them breathe. You're not making for the old city, she'd say. You make for the next one. Slowly, doors opened. One old show drew a photographer from a small South American fashion site. Another brought in a columnist from a design magazine. People started showing up, not just for the free wine and empanadas, but to see what new madness we'd conjured. I worked the machines, sewed through cut fingers, and learned how to talk about my work without apology. 4 years spun by in a rush. We traveled to Santiago, then Sao Paulo, catching trains with borrowed money and suitcases full of garments we guarded like treasure. I made things I hadn't even dreamed I could finish. A crimson dress made from recycled tango shawls. A jacket sewn so the seams mimicked the city's old pier railways. Dresses that looked like they'd been dipped in dusk. Eventually, people in the north noticed. A boutique in New York bought one collection. A magazine in Milan ran a spread. Fernanda and I met with investors, though we still split sandwiches and counted coins at the corner bakery. Money came slowly, but the recognition was unmistakable. One spring afternoon, a major gallery in Buenos Aires, yes, the same city that rolled its eyes at me, commissioned a show. They wanted Bear's Ashes, my latest collection, for a launch during Fashion Week. It felt unreal. My hands shook as I signed the contract. Suddenly, People I'd trailed behind became colleagues, even admirers. And in the months before the show, I felt something growing. Not pride exactly, but a quiet, anchoring relief. The same streets that shut me out were now holding open their gates. I returned to Almagro with an invitation, one for the show opening. Name printed elegantly for my family. There was still a part of me wrestling with old hurts, but the clarity I'd gained let me see things as they were. Mama studied the card as if it might bite her, unsure, hopeful in secret. Martin tried not to grin when he heard I was showing fancy dresses at a museum. In the weeks before the show, reporters came by the studio. The old university where I'd faced the committee sent a request for an interview. I said yes, not out of spite, but out of gratitude for clarity. Their rejection had forced me to shed what wasn't essential. Finally, the night of the opening, I arrived at the Riverside Gallery early, nervous to the point of nausea. The windows blasted with golden evening light. Inside, white walls framed my collection. Dresses draped on mannequins, swathes of midnight blue and sunlit copper. Fragments of the city stitched lovingly into each piece. I spotted my family arriving. Mama in her best blouse, Martin in a misbuttoned shirt, several aunts and cousins trailing behind, shepherded through the corridors. They looked everywhere but at me at first, as if I might vanish if noticed. There were others too, old neighbors, childhood friends, even two of the professors from that university committee, shoulders hunched as they lingered near the door. I stood beside my work, ever the seamstress. When the doors opened for the guests, the room filled with voices, laughter, the fizz of glasses. A well-known critic from La Nation paused before my favorite piece, a dress inspired by the city's decaying train stations. She murmured appreciation. Flashes went up as photographers circled the display. One of the professors shuffled over, recognition dawning slowly. His eyes flickered to my name tag. "You are Lucia Montenegro," he said, voice uncertain.